You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello everyone, thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
All right, I'm going first this week. So I am an only child, and until recently, sibling rivalry was kind of more in the theoretical realm for me. I'm now the mom of 2-year-old twins, so it's become a lot more real lately. But
I would imagine.
They're fun, aren't they, as a twin?
Indeed. My kids' squabbles over toys and books, though, are nothing compared with some of the stuff that goes on in the animal kingdom. So I'm sure you've probably heard of the runt of the litter, like with a puppy or a pig. Animals that have multiple births, there's often one that just kind of got short-stinted in the womb and is sickly and small and has trouble getting enough milk and often will die.
That was me.
And yet you've made it this far.
Haha.
The runt's revenge. But this is something much weirder. I am going to talk today about intra-uterine cannibalism.
Oh my.
Well, this already sounds
gonna
just...
be something.
Whew.
Now, Rachel, you said you are a twin?
Yes, I am.
We're all, and the audience is all glad that you were not a victim of this.
I am very glad about that, considering that even though I was the smaller twin, I was born first. So, I win.
Tell us all about it, Victoria.
Well, there is stuff that goes on among humans and in other places among mammals where a twin can get absorbed by another twin, but that's not what I'm talking about today. Today I'm going to talk about sharks. Sharks?
Ooh, I love sharks.
I know where this is going.
I don't.
Sharks give birth to live young, which is kind of surprising because you don't think about fish as being pregnant and giving birth like that. But many of them do, and they have different strategies for feeding their little embryos. Basically what happens is the shark has 2 uteruses, and it'll lay eggs inside the uterus, and then the thing hatches out in the uterus and kind of grows there until it's ready to be born. So a little different than how mammals do it. Where it's most similar to mammals, some species of shark, the embryo will consume all the yolk in its egg, and then the yolk sac attaches to the uterus and forms a kind of a placenta. Pretty normal. Okay, right? Some shark moms feed their babies by making a lot of extra unfertilized eggs, and after the embryo hatches out inside their uterus, it will eat the other eggs. So that's cannibalism, but a pretty mild form, right?
It's kind of like, feeding a chicken scrambled eggs.
I know we're in a podcast, but I'm just so shocked. I'm speechless.
I wish you could all see Rachel's face. It's gonna get better too.
Oh God.
Actually, within this group where they eat the eggs, oophagy, there's one species called the tawny nurse shark, where the embryo can actually swim from one uterus to the other to consume extra eggs, and it can poke its head out of the cervix well before it's born. Just take a peek around and see how the ocean is today.
I hate that.
Sounds really uncomfortable for mom, but what do I know? I'm not a shark. Okay, now we get to our star of the show today. The sand tiger shark also goes by a number of other names. The gray nurse shark. Its Latin name is Carcarius taurus, and these guys, they're pretty sharky looking. They have really scary teeth. They have those little nasty beady eyes. They look like they want to eat you. They're actually not very dangerous to humans at all. Their mouths really aren't big enough to bite people, even if they were inclined to. They're not aggressive. They're fine. They're nice sharks. But they practice what's known as adelphophagy, eating one's brother. Adelpho for brother, phagy for eating. Yeah.
Do they eat sisters, or is it like a brother thing only?
Oh, it's just the inherent sexism of.
That's kind of what I
Oh,
figured.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, when I was a child, that would have been great to know about because, like, my brother was much bigger than I was, and he was mean sometimes.
Hungry often?
Yeah, he ate everything. Couldn't even put
Wow.
my name on things. It was terrible. Anyway.
Well, anyway, these guys, they actually mate with several males, and so the different eggs in their uteruses can be fertilized by different males. But the first embryo to hatch is the lucky one. They are about 6 centimeters long when they hatch, and that first one in each uterus to hatch then goes on to eat all the other fertilized embryos or eggs, experiencing exponential growth in their 8 to 12 month gestation. So they start out at 6 centimeters when they hatch inside, and when they're born, they're up to a meter or even a little larger in length.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh my.
So this is a really interesting
That's-
reproductive strategy because the
Right.
shark mom only gives birth to 2 babies, and she only gives birth every 1 to 2 years. It's one of the lowest reproductive rate for sharks. But you can imagine if you're already a meter long shark when you're born, there's not a whole lot out there in the ocean that's going to eat you. So in terms of the survival of her offspring, it's probably pretty good strategy.
Well, I would imagine too with that, it sounds like if they are a species who mates with more than one partner, and there's multiple, fertilized eggs from different partners, that if you are the first one out and you are you're basically eating the competition and keeping them out of the gene pool.
Well, actually, that was the
makes
next thing I was going to say.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, perfect.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like survival of the fittest, but before you're even born.
This is called Survivor Edition.
Survival of the hungriest genes or something. Yeah.
That's
This
all
is
I have
like-
today.
Oh my goodness.
That was
Disturbing?
us disturbing. We're gonna need a bit of a palate cleanser on that one, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I look forward to hearing it.
Kirk here with a quick note. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It helps other lovers of the strange find our show. You can also find and follow us on social media. Search for Strange by Nature Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or come visit us at strangebynaturepodcast.com. We'll see you there. Now, back to the show. All right, well, we're back from the break, and I am up next. And luckily, after that somewhat horrifying tale of eating one's siblings before they're born from Victoria, I have something a little bit sweeter for us. And we have Rachel to thank for this story because she requested it.
Yes, I'm so excited.
So we need to give a little backstory on this. You got to go back to the year 1966 in Quebec. And this is when a bunch of maple syrup producers, since it is March and we're talking about maple syrup.
We love maple syrup.
They formed what I think they would probably call like a co-op, but much of the world refers to as simply a cartel. They wanted to really corner the market on maple syrup, and it has grown to this day where they now control 77% of the world's maple syrup production. And as we learned last week, maple syrup is big business. So we are talking millions and millions of dollars that this organization controls. They are known as the Federation of Quebec Maple Syrup Producers, or the FPAQ. Of course, it doesn't line up because it's it's actually in French.
Of course.
Of course, being in Quebec. Now, the thing about this is, it really is actually a pretty intelligent strategy they're looking at, although it is controversial in its own right, and some producers are kind of trying to rebel against it. That's a whole other story. What happened, though, is that they wanted to insulate themselves from the ups and downs of the market, because if you think about maple syrup production, it's a natural product, and it's completely weather dependent. If you've ever been someone who's made it before, you would know some years you make a ton, some years you make very little. And if you are a person relying on that for your income, that is very, very challenging. So they wanted to create something that, I just love this name. It is the the ISR, the International Strategic Reserve. It's like the
I love that this is maple syrup.
Sounds like it's for
Yeah.
oil, doesn't it?
It's
Yeah,
like,
it does.
exactly. It's like the strategic petroleum reserve, but it's for maple syrup, and it's sort of similar function. They want to try to kind of flatten out, some of the prices, and so people can rely on kind of a bunch more fixed price for their product each year because they're controlling exactly how much gets released from this strategic reserve. So
honestly,
brilliant.
it does sound very similar, not only to just like a cartel or a monopoly, but it also just makes me think of the people who are doomsday people who like doomsday preppers. So like just hoarding, instead of canned goods and medical supplies and water, it's maple syrup.
All you
Just
really need to survive.
Millions and millions of gallons. Yeah, it is really all you need.
Truly.
So it may sound pretty fancy, but really all it is a bunch of warehouses in rural Quebec full of white barrels of maple syrup that sit there. And this proved the perfect setup for what's known as the Great Maple Syrup heist. And what happened was in 2012, an inspector named Michel Gavreau climbed onto a barrel in a warehouse to get like a little bit higher perspective or check some barrels. There's a regulation that these warehouses need to have an inspector come through once a year and look things over, So he climbed onto one of these barrels to get up to the next level and almost fell and became injured when the barrel wobbled.
It shouldn't wobble.
Now, it should not wobble. A barrel of maple syrup weighs about 600 pounds. And so the fact that it wobbled, he was like, huh?
Oh gosh.
Oh, hold on. And kind of ting, 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 knocks on the barrel. That's strange. And knocks on another barrel. Ting, ting, ting. They're empty. All these barrels stacked up in the warehouse are empty.
I don't want to be Michelle.
Yeah. A huge investigation ensues. And they revealed that starting a year earlier in 2011, someone had snuck into the warehouse and started to remove the barrels. And what they did is they were loading them up on a truck, driving them to a local sugar shack, draining the barrels, draining all 600 pounds of maple syrup out, and refilling the barrel with water. They would then load it back on the truck, drive back to the warehouse, and replace it, hoping that people would not notice, until that barrel needed to be used. So they had hopefully a year or more before they could try to pull this off. This was no small operation. They were doing, truckloads of these. And at some point they said, you know what? People are going to find out anyways, I think. So why are we going to so much work transporting these and filling them with water? Let's just drain them right there at the warehouse. So they started draining the barrels in the warehouse and pumping it out. And they would be then leaving the empty barrels behind, stacked up, looking like nothing was wrong. So if you just glanced in, you wouldn't really notice. And it turns out that what they were really doing is they were taking this in small batches and taking it to both Vermont and New Brunswick, where they were selling it off. And it all made most of it, some of it was recovered afterwards, but most of it made its way into our maple syrup production. Some of it may have ended up, on your table at home. When all was tallied at the end, it turns out the thieves had stolen 3,000 tons.
Oh my God.
Of maple syrup from the warehouse.
That's more than I thought it was.
Yeah, that's 6 million pounds of maple syrup. Or in other words, from what I read, 9,571 barrels.
Yeah, I was just doing the math in my head and coming out with about 10,000 barrels.
Yeah, so a lot.
Do they not have... If this is 2011, 2012, where was the security? This is...
Well, it was maple syrup. And I think they thought it was just in these warehouses and who was going to go and steal this maple syrup. But of course, as we talked about last week, maple syrup is incredibly valuable. Each one of these barrels is worth, on average, I think last week I said is about $1,400 per barrel, since maple syrup is so hard to make. So it turns out, I of course have the numbers here. Now this is back in 2012 dollars, but the syrup that was stolen was valued at 18.7 million Canadian dollars worth of maple syrup. Or that would be 14.7 American dollars, we got to adjust for inflation now because it's no longer 2012. So
I'm not ready for
in
this.
2021, adjusted for inflation, that is 16.57 million American dollars, or in Canadian dollars, that is 21 million Canadian dollars. It's astounding. It is considered the largest heist in Canadian history. Now, I will give you a little bit more information here. The police were pretty suspicious about how over 9,000 barrels could disappear. This isn't somebody like
Somebody
strolling
knew.
in and oh yes, somebody knew exactly. Suspicion fell on the owners of the warehouse, and it turns out Avik Karen, I'm not sure if I'm saying that name right, who was the spouse of one of the warehouse owners, was implicated in this and served 5 years in prison and a $1.2 million fine. The ringleader of this entire operation, Richard Valieris, was sentenced to 8 years in prison and a $9.4 million fine.
Oh my God.
And this is a lovely little Canadian sort of twist to this too. They said, look, but you know what? Your actual sentence will be 14 years if you can't pay the money back. So it's sort of like, if you pay us back, then it's only 8 years,
You know what? I'm guessing if they ever get served pancakes or waffles in prison, it's not real maple syrup.
No, they're going to eat the
Ooh.
fake stuff, and that would be some sweet revenge there. All told, the police arrested 17 people in this case who were part of the largest heist in Canadian history. And that's what I have for you today.
I have heard of this before, obviously, like you talked about it last week a little bit, and I had heard of the heist before this. My jaw was on the floor. I don't know. That's so much more money than that's so many barrels of maple syrup. I don't know.
I had, when I started
details.
researching it, I pictured somebody was like, oh yeah, they loaded up a bunch of barrels into their truck and they got, 50 barrels of maple syrup. It's 9,000. It's 9,571. Like, they must have been it was like a full-time job just unloading this warehouse.
And they had to go multiple times and everything too. Like, this was not just like a one and done, because whenever I pictured it, it was the same thing. Like, they loaded up a bunch of barrels and then left.
Yeah, I'd heard of this too, but the details really are mind-boggling.
Oh my god.
Quite astounding. So again, enjoy that maple syrup. It is maple syrup making season, and don't steal it. Go out and buy some.
All right. Well, we're back from the break, and now it is my turn. This week, what I have for you is something that is not necessarily always thought of as a berry. So I'm going for a plant this year. Wow. I'm going for a plant this time.
It's been a long week, hasn't it?
It's been a long week. So what I'm doing this week is I'm talking about a banana.
I like bananas.
Banana.
Okay.
Right? You don't think that bananas are
I-
bizarre. I think you know where I'm going to end up with this.
Yeah.
I totally don't. So
Ooh, I'm so
excited
excited.
to hear what this is about.
So a little bit of background on bananas. A lot of us have seen bananas. They're in the grocery store. They're that yellow
Rachel,
fruit.
I think it's fair to say we've all seen bananas, not some of us.
That's fair. All of us have seen bananas. But did you know that rind, the yellow color that we see, it can be green, yellow, red, purple, and brown when it's ripe, depending on the species or the cultivar, which I didn't know before doing the research. So botanically speaking, a banana is the fruit of a banana plant is actually a berry. A berry, technically speaking, is a fleshy fruit that doesn't have a stone or a pit, very similar to like avocados or peaches, things like that, where it's then produced from a single flower which contains a single ovary. That's what defines a berry botanically speaking, not necessarily culinary speaking, which is what we're all more familiar with. for example, strawberries are not actual berries, but that's another story. What do you picture when you picture a banana plant?
A big palmy.
Yeah, big, huge
Leaves.
leaves.
The giant
And bananas
bunches of
growing
bananas
the wrong
hanging off
way.
of them.
Mm-hmm. Do you picture like a shrub type thing, or do you picture a tree?
Well, it's kind of a shrub, isn't it?
I picture like a tall plant that looks like a tree but isn't.
Exactly.
That's just because I'm a giant nerd, though.
That's also fair. A lot of people, when they think of bananas, you think of kind of like coconut trees or pineapple trees, like they're really, really tall and the bananas are hanging on there and it looks like a tree. It's not actually a tree. It's actually a type of herb. So it is the world's largest herbaceous flowering plant. They're often mistaken for trees, but that's because they don't have a woody stem that is above the ground. So they start off with this bulbotuber, which is very similar to like a potato or a tulip bulb, and that's called a corm. And the leaves shoot out from that, they sprout out, and eventually they just keep sprouting new leaves growing from the center of that tube. And that creates something that looks very similar to a woody stem. Eventually, they get as tall as 23 feet in height,
Wow.
which I was not prepared for knowing.
That's
And
a large herb.
that is a large herb. The smallest, the dwarf Cavendish, which a lot of us see in the yellow bananas we find in the grocery store, that grows to 10 feet, and that's the smallest of all of the banana plants. So when it matures, the corm stops making new leaves and makes something called an inflorescence or a flower spike, and that eventually produces the flowers, which produces the banana fruit. Now, this is technically in the Musa genus, as coined by Carl Linnaeus himself in 1753. He got a lot of things wrong, but he started the name of the genus, so we still go with it in his honor. What is really interesting is that, and why I've included it on our Strange by Nature podcast here, is almost all modern bananas, which are all seedless, not all bananas are seedless, are actually originally from two wild species. They originated from two wild species that originated in Indo-Malaya, so in the Indonesian, Malaysian area, most likely from Papua New Guinea, way out in the Pacific Ocean. Now it's grown in 135 countries. The cool thing, and why I have included it for my story this week, is not only are all bananas genetically the same, exactly, they reproduce asexually. So all of the modern Cavendish bananas that we all eat are genetically exactly the same.
Oh, because they don't have any seeds, right?
They don't have any seeds. Which is crazy. And there's a lot of different issues when it comes to being genetically the same. And we know what that issue is because we've actually run into this problem before. Now, have either of you had banana candy or banana flavored candy, like banana Laffy Taffies?
Yep.
Not very often. I mean, I like bananas, but fake banana.
When I was a
kinda
wee
turns
lad.
me off.
Yeah, it tastes different, right?
Sure does.
The reason why banana flavored candy actually tastes different is that was modeled and done after a different banana species.
What?
Oh, yeah.
In the 1950s, before 1950s, the Cavendish bananas that we know and eat and enjoy all the time now were not the ones that were commercially sold everywhere.
Oh, wow.
Before the 1950s, a banana called the Gross, I want to say Michael, but it's probably Mitchell, or Michael.
It's Gros Michel.
Gros Michel. Thank you.
Be French.
It's
Yep.
French. That, of course.
Again, huge nerd.
There it is. Thank you very much, Kirk. So the Gros Michel, Gros Michel. I can't speak French. If you all didn't
Easy
know
for
this.
you to say.
There it is.
You can call it the Big Mike.
Right. I don't want to. So it became unviable commercially because very similar to the Cavendishes, it also was a asexually reproduced plant because it's a seedless fruit, right? It fell prey to something called Panama disease. This was caused by a fungus that is called Fusarium oxysporum. Sure, I can do Latin, but I can't do French. Why not? And what that fungus actually did was it attacked the roots of the exactly like you guys couldn't see this, but Kirk had a fake knife just trying to stab at the roots of this.
That
banana.
may be overly dramatic.
Kirk is the banana slasher.
We should have known.
Secrets.
Banana slasher. So
Let's not start that, please. That's not a nickname I have associated with me.
anyway, so
By the way, that is going to be the name of this episode. By the way,
Just wrote it down.
Yes.
Good.
The banana slasher. So the Fusaria oxysporum attacks the roots of the plants. It attacks that. It attacks the corm of the plant, and when it attacks that, it causes it to die. So because all of these plants, all of the Gros Michel, were susceptible to it, they couldn't grow it they couldn't grow commercially. They couldn't get enough bananas because all of them were getting sick from this Panama disease. However, thankfully, in the 1950s, we had this other species that came into existence technically in 1836 called the Cavendish. There's two species of it. It's the dwarf Cavendish, which I talked about earlier. That one, it grows to about 10 feet tall. And then there's the Grand Nain. We're going to go with Nain, which is what the Chiquitita. No. Chiquita. That's...
You really picked a... You picked a great one this week for
I really did
pronunciation.
for pronunciation. Sure, can do Latin.
Chiquitita.
Say that again?
Chiquitita.
Was this Chiquitita? Well,
Yep.
No, go with that. Chiquitita.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Chiquitita. Chiquita is another type of... There's two different Cavendish species. So we already had those available. So the banana industry as a whole, because it was very economically important, they switched from the Gros Michel to the Cavendish bananas, and we've been having those bananas ever since. Now, these bananas are also asexually reproducing and are all genetically the same, which means that they can't evolve any sort of disease resistance. The only thing that the Cavendish bananas have above the Gros Michel is that they don't get affected by the Fusarium oxysporum or the Panama disease. They are resistant to it. So the reason why most people don't like banana candy is because it's a different flavor of banana than what we are used to. However, fun time is that in the next 10 to 20 years or so, people are thinking that the Cavendish could also become unviable for large-scale cultivation. In 2012, ironically, there was a scare with the Cavendish bananas that there was a potential epidemic or pandemic that started to affect some of the Cavendish bananas, but then they were able to curb that. So they bought themselves some time. But we really need to stop having the same exact species of banana that is just spread everywhere. We just keep relying on the same exact banana species and not spreading it all out like we should be.
One banana clone covering the planet.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't learn our lessons. That's not something
we have
humans
not
do.
learned our lesson at all. So eventually we're going to have another new flavor of banana and people are going to be upset and we'll just have to live with it.
Maybe it'll be more delicious. Who knows?
Maybe.
Well, it could be. I know people who are old enough to remember often complain that the Cavendish bananas are really bland and they used to really love the Big Mike or the Gros Michel bananas. So, maybe there are some bananas out there that you can get that are not really commercially viable, but people grow them in their backyards and things, and they're amazing. They have so much more flavor.
Exactly.
So if they can get one of those to be commercially viable, that's exciting.
That would be
see
amazing.
Some little red bananas in the grocery store sometimes.
Maybe
I don't
try
think I've
those
ever
out.
Tried them. Yeah.
See,
I think part of the problem is a lot of the little ones don't travel well because the skin is so thin, and there's that thick skin on the banana that really protects it. So
yeah, that
maybe
rind is
out.
really, really important. I do have one more fun, strange fact because it is a banana, and this isn't meant to scare anybody, by the way. But technically speaking,
this is not the Halloween episode.
This is not the Halloween episode. Okay. I know. But technically speaking, because of the type of potassium that bananas have, they emit radiation. So every time you eat a single banana, consuming one banana is about 1% of your average daily exposure to radiation. You're going to get 400 times the amount if you fly or anything like that. But it was something like, I think when I was researching, it was 0.15 micro, I forget the microepsilons. I forget what the unit of measurement was.
I really want to know if a microepsilon is a unit of measure, and if it's not, we need to make it one.
Right? That would be amazing.
Microepaulet is like a little thing that goes on your shoulder.
There it is. But so since they contain potassium, it is a very bad joke. But since they contain potassium, they do emit radiation. It's not something that you need to freak out about, but it is a fun fact. It doesn't add to the total radiation dose that is in the human body anyway, not in any way, slight way or form or anything. But it is something that I really wanted to touch on.
Eat your bananas.
Eat your bananas.
Potassium is more important for your body than you get more radiation from just walking around in your house than from a banana.
Okay.
You are not wrong. And that's what I've got for you both this week.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.